They may take our lives, but they'll never take our whiskey.
Really?
Yeah.
Let's get down to business.
Welcome back to Whisky Business. I'm Levi.
I'm Evan.
And today we're headed back to the homeland of Scotch itself. So Evan, what have you brought along for us?
So we have brought along something a little bit rare, much like the last episode, but as it turns out, this is really only rare in Australia, not so much if you're over in the British Isles. So we've got the Nevis Distillery McDonald's Traditional. Now, what's interesting about this is the 185th year celebration whiskey.
Wow, that's old.
So that's old. So in order to celebrate that milestone, they've decided to distill a whiskey the same way they would have back then.
Yep.
So they've really gone for it. And because of that, there's not a lot of information about it in terms of what casks were used and sort of stuff. All we know is it's a peated whiskey. The barley has come from the Islay region. Islay region. So they've gone properly traditional on that one. Ben Nevis itself is a Highland distillery, so not really known for the peat there as much as the Islay distillery.
A
little bit different for them as well. It is 35 ppm, so that kind of puts it in the range of...
Mid-range for a peated whiskey.
Wouldn't
call it. It's definitely not heavily peated.
No, not heavily peated. But definitely has an interesting flavour profile on it, which I'm excited to get into. A 46% whiskey, and that's really all I kind of have on it until we get into the latest one. So, shall we?
Bottoms up.
Ooh.
It smells pretty traditional.
I know.
It's quite strong.
A lot of peat.
Yeah, a lot of peat, a lot of alcohol for 46%.
Oh, yeah. A lot of heat down the bottom.
Yeah.
Alright, let's
go.
Oh, wow.
That's peatier than I was expecting.
Yeah, but not super.
Got a good sort of charred finish to it as well. Quite smoky and...
Really raises to the top of the palate, like you drink it and it kind of doesn't stick around on the tongue, but you still feel it on like the back of the throat and the top of your palate there as well.
That's probably a bit more fire than heat.
Yeah.
It's a little, I wouldn't say it's rough on the way down, but it's you can definitely get a lot of the heat out of that. Really interesting flavor profile, quite simple. There's not a lot of complexity to it, but strong on peat, strong on char. They've really kind of gone for a one note thing here, I think. And it's good. It's just, it's very strong.
That is very strong.
A bit stronger than I think we were both expecting, to be honest. But
I would still really enjoy that in like winter or something like that. I feel it's kind of...
Well, you can sort of see that they've really, like, obviously with the way that they've distilled it and they've gone for the full traditional route and, they're probably using nothing but old timber barrels. Yeah. We don't know for sure, but we're speculating here entirely. But you can really get that sort of old world flavour. It's a really sort of traditional smoker's jacket, sitting in a big leather Chesterfield with a glass of scotch in one hand. It's good. I think maybe what we're both a little bit trepidatious about is that it is very almost true traditional, and it's not. I don't know.
There's not a lot of complexity in the flavour. Like in order to get some information, I was reading some reviews on tasting notes, and all of that stuff that was on there, I'm not tasting any of it. Like they said, there was like chocolate and citrus, and I'm just like, I'm not really getting any of that because the peat just kind of overtakes everything in there.
Yeah, it's not
in a horrible way.
It's not bad. Yeah. It's just very. Yeah, I'm not sure. This we'll talk about who should and shouldn't drink it, but that's not a start you off on this and see.
Well, let's see how we go with some water. We are getting better with our water dropper, which is nice, and not chucking a bit too much here.
Not pouring half a litre of water in it. It's a bit easier on the nose now. Still just smells super peaty and super alcoholic, but it's the edge is kind of rounded off a little bit now.
You're definitely getting more flavours with that water. I'm still not getting anything that sweet.
It's still, nor am I. It's very, very peaty, very smoky.
the water just kind of rounds it out.
Yeah, makes it a little bit easier to drink, to be fair.
But I still wouldn't think that does a lot. I still prefer it neat. Like, because I think for me, if I was going to drink something like this, I'd want to be drinking a peaty whiskey.
Yep.
Like,
you're setting yourself for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, so that's what I want, kind of thing. Like, whereas I don't feel the water really adds anything to it. Doesn't make me want to drink it more. It doesn't really bring out any other flavours.
Yeah, I think as well, certain kind of whiskies, and when you start drinking whiskies, you'll get this. There is a mood to certain whiskies.
Oh, absolutely.
And we're filming this quite early on a Saturday morning, and I had been having a couple of beers last night, and I think that the last thing that I would have wanted this morning was to wake up and go, you know what I really want?
Peaty whiskey.
A whiskey that's kind of like chewing a steak. So I think in the right mood and the right mindset, that would probably be a bit better. I'm finding it a bit sort of rough to get through that this morning, to be completely honest.
No, that's fair.
It's very interesting though. I'm intrigued by what they've done in terms of the traditional distilling methods and that sort of stuff. I think it obviously makes it different.
I think maybe you poured a bit too much into these glasses, if I'm honest. So we're going to have to finish it all first.
I'm a little bit hungover. That's all right. Let's not make a big deal out of it.
The coolness, I think the coolness definitely adds something to it.
Yeah.
But you're not feeling anything other than that?
Again, I think it rounds the flavour off a little bit, makes it a little bit smoother, does all that sort of stuff that we sort of expect water and ice to do with a whiskey, but it's still not... Yeah, it's not a bad thing that there's not a lot of complexity in flavour. Some of my favourite whiskies are very simple,
absolutely,
very neat and easy drinking. I think that one, I think it's just a little rough, to be honest, for me. I like the flavour of it. Again, in the right mood. 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. But
I'm really enjoying it. I think it's a great example of a peated whiskey.
Yeah.
I think there's some really good stuff that it does. I think there is some fire, but it's not ridiculous. I think there's a good balance between your peat and your heat.
Yep.
Oh, I like that. We should use that more. Peat and heat.
That works. We coined a term last week that we didn't end up using, which was Japaniski.
And you see why we didn't use it.
Probably never use it again. But yeah, peat and heat, that works. That to me is the sort of, it's just a little bit over that tipping point between heat and fire.
Okay.
I think for me, it's just a bit rough to get down.
I don't think I'm feeling that as much. I think it's got a good amount of heat. I don't think it's overpowering. I don't know if that's because you are in a bit of a delicate situation.
Not my usual peppy self.
Not your usual peppy self. But no, I would gladly finish off a day with that.
I think that is like the definition of, for me at least, a mood whiskey.
Yeah.
And in the right mood on a cold wintry night when you're sitting at home and you just want a nice peated whiskey, you're probably going to have one or two. You're not having a big session on the drink.
Absolutely.
That would be delightful. We've talked about it before. Whiskey's a lot about storytelling, about mood, about atmosphere, and all that sort of stuff. I just maybe this morning, but that to me is just a little bit too fiery.
Do you think there's just no story because it's one, a distillery you haven't heard of before? Two, it's kind of
that probably plays into it a little bit.
Like this was a birthday present for me,
and a wonderful birthday present,
and a really wonderful birthday present. But I knew nothing about Ben Nevis. It was bought from a whiskey bar as opposed to being from Dan's, who we usually talk about, or anything like that. So they would have the slightly rarer stuff there that you're not really going to have anywhere else. So it was definitely new to us when we saw it. I'd never heard of Ben Nevis before heading into this. It's interesting, like getting all that. So not a lot of the story, whereas I suppose a lot of the stuff we've had so far is something we like, something we've had a story around, and
we've known a bit more about it.
We're trying to push ourselves to try and review some other stuff that we might know.
And that's
so much
what
about.
This is all about. I think that you probably, if you were giving it the one word review, it's probably interesting.
Oh yeah,
that's probably what you're saying.
That
because we do, and we always do the whole. It's different. It's doing stuff that not other whiskies are doing.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
This one's not.
This one's doing.
It's very traditional.
It's a very traditional peated Scottish whiskey.
Well, I think that's, if you summed it up and you were describing it to someone, you'd say it's a traditional peated whiskey. And most people that drink whiskey are going to go, I know exactly what they're talking about, and they're going to have it and go, yeah, that's exactly what I was expecting.
That's exactly what you're thinking if you're looking at the Isla region, something, in the Ardbeg, the Lake Berlin, the Lafroig range, and sort of stuff like that. But the difference is this is coming from the Highlands, as opposed to the Isla region. And so it's a little bit different for the Highlands region, but not incredibly different for Scotch.
Yeah, and you're setting an expectation, and we talked a little bit about this with one of the other whiskies that we've reviewed, that you have an expectation with the distillery with a certain kind of whiskey that you kind of know what you're going to drink when you do it. Japanese whiskey's clean, neat, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I think it's a good flavour. It's a very simple flavour, but I think for me, it's just a little bit too much on the fire. Yeah, that's probably the only thing that's letting it down for mine. But interesting.
Cool. So in terms of pricing, obviously a little bit tough because it is a rarer thing in research. Because there's no real stores. Like if I look on somewhere like Master of Malt, it comes up around $70 or so. Right. So if we convert that to say what you would probably find in store, I'd say 120, 130. I would say, especially because it's going to be a rarity in Australia, going into a boutique whiskey cellar as opposed to a mass retailer like someone like Dan's. That means there's going to be a bit of, so we'll say that's around $130 whiskey.
Yeah, and I think it'd be fair to say as well that as we talked about with the Nika, when something's imported and you sort of get runs and batches of it, you might wind up where there's a few of these floating around and it's probably not as expensive, so it's probably around that 110, 120 mark. And you might get times where there's one bottle in Australia and people will sell it for 50% more than what it should retail for.
So if we're rating around that 130 mark, I suppose what you're paying for is that rarity.
Yeah.
Because it's a peated Highland whiskey, because it's a 185th celebration. This is actually the second run of their 185th celebration. They did a numbered bottle range, so there were only 700, so that one was a bit more expensive. This is the second expression in that same style, which I believe is a bit more mass marketed, but still not a high level mass market. Nevis is not a huge distillery, but they're old.
Yeah,
I suppose is the thing.
Very
storied type thing. You jump on their website and one of the first things is at the bottom of one of Britain's highest mountains, and you're just like, oh, classic.
Which we love. It's part of the whole appeal of drinking Scotch and whiskies, and you want the stories and you want the history to a degree. Just don't get yourself into a position where that's all you can look at. Make sure that you try other stuff and see what they do.
I'm struggling on rating this one.
I had a number that popped straight in my head as soon as I drank it.
What have you got?
I think it's a 6.
You think it's a 6?
Yeah, I think it's a 6. It's not bad, and I'm certainly not saying that it's bad. I think that my general mood and demeanour about the whiskey's probably come across a lot more negative than I intended it to. But
I probably couldn't go higher than a 7, so I think that's where I'll go. Like, it's not. I think this is the thing sometimes with our rating system, like.
Well, there is no system.
There is no system.
Broadly, what is it against in terms of pricing for other whiskies?
I know.
It's just gut feel. So.
It's really just gut feel.
Yeah.
Like, I suppose if we came down to it, would I want to drink this again? Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I would love to have another glass of this. When I run out the bottle, would I buy another bottle? No.
Probably not, yeah.
Probably not.
I imagine that it's the sort of thing, especially if you have had it and you're at a whiskey bar with someone that has not had it and has not heard of Ben Nevis, you might say, oh, I've actually tried that. If you like peated whiskies, we should give it a go.
That's a good one to go with.
Yeah, I think that's probably where it stands. And again, we've talked about this with peat before especially. I don't think that's the one that you want to introduce yourself as a peaty whiskey drinker. That's
still probably a little bit too on the rough side.
Yeah.
I like when probably a little bit higher on the ppm than you would want to introduce someone with.
This is interesting, right? We've talked about ppm before. My favourite whiskey, which we will be reviewing in a future episode, has a much higher ppm than that, and probably does taste slightly peatier, but I think it's better balanced. I think with this one, we talked about it when we talked about the Octomore. The ppm rating is just sort of a guide, and it's not the be-all and end-all.
It's true.
If you told me that was a 35 ppm, after I'd drunk it, I would say, I think you might have misread that bottle. Yeah. That tastes like a higher peated whiskey than a 35 when you compare it to stuff in that range. But I think that's purely because, as we talked about the Octomore, the balancing of peat within a whiskey is a really important thing. I think that is just a little bit too front end harsh on the peat.
Yeah.
And not necessarily for me, because I love a peated whiskey. The flavour was great. But the fact that it's not sort of rounded off and the fire's quite strong on that, it's all of it's quite harsh.
Yeah.
And all of it's quite sort of punchy and a little bit too much, I think. But yeah, so I'm saying 6, you're saying 6?
I'm saying 7.
Oh, 7, okay.
Yeah. As I said, I think it's...
Always have to be disagreeable, don't you?
I know. No, but I don't think it's a bad example. As I said, I like it overall. Like, I like the balance between the peat and the heat. It's a really, really nice drink. Definitely something I probably wouldn't do at 9 o'clock in the morning again, but something I would love to sit and drink after dinner as kind of a nightcap type thing, or in the middle of winter, like when it's really cold. That's the kind of whiskey I would want in my hand.
Definitely a mood and a feel type.
Definitely a mood and a feel.
A touch and feel type whiskey. So.
If you want to try a glass of that and you're in Melbourne, Whisky and Almond is probably your best bet. But if you're anywhere else, definitely just head to wherever your local whiskey bar is, see if they've got it. If you're in the British Isles, I think you're fine. You're probably going to find this pretty easily.
Absolutely.
So it's a good drop. Would I recommend buying a bottle? Only if you love the glass. That's kind of it. If you get given it for a birthday present, hey, win-win.
Yes, correct. We haven't said it too many times in terms of just go and buy a bottle of this, and I don't think we'd say it for this. We'd definitely say buy a glass, see what you think first, and then if you're into it, great.
Absolutely.
Good for you. I don't think... Well, I think we're both saying it's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's drinkable. It has its benefits, but it's not something I'd go out of my way to show someone.
Yeah.
Like, it's not one of those whiskies where you feel it's doing something amazing. It's doing what Scotch does.
Yep.
And that's it. There's the thing. It's a traditional Scotch. And it says that right on the label.
And it is a very good example of that.
Exactly. A very good example of that. And if that's how they made whiskey 185 years ago, well then, things really haven't changed that much in 185 years for Scotch.
You'd probably just say that the refinements that have happened have probably made it. Exactly right. If you're saying that that's how they made it 185 years ago, I would have been stunned. I would have thought it would be much, much harder to get a glass of that now 185 years ago than that. So there you go. But again, interesting story behind it. And not bad whiskey. Not bad.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, that's it for this episode. We had a bit of fun doing the Ben Nevis.
Yeah, really interesting.
Really interesting. We will be back next week, same time, 5 p.m. on Monday, coming back home and doing our first whiskey from our hometown of Melbourne.
Properly back home. So we're really looking forward to showing you guys that. Other than that, please like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you next Monday at 5 p.m. And as always, make sure to keep your business whiskey. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.